friends, it's Unicorn, and today I'm going to talk about all the books I'm gonna read for next month from and about Asia reading project for Uzbekistan. If you didn't know, From and About Asia is a reading project that I'm hosting to expand our reading horizon and share and celebrate the diversity of Asian culture in literature. And I have a webpage of all the information. I'll link down below. We also have a Discord server where we discuss and talk about our in-depth thoughts of the books that we're reading from. And also, currently, we're in the middle of a buddy read of a North Korean book called The Accusation. I loved the community and the amazing discussions we're having. So if you are interested in the event, do join the Discord server. I'll link it down below as well, along with the announcements video and some other videos that I made before. So for June, our country of choice is Uzbekistan. That means we're going to read two types of books. First, we're going to read a book from Uzbek authors, and second, we're going to read the culture of the sub-region where Uzbekistan is from. So we're going to be reading books about Central Asia cultures. Personally, to be completely honest, I don't really know a lot about the Central Asian countries besides they are all stands. So I think that is why it's important for us to go on reading projects like this and read more and learn more from the underrepresented countries. So during my research, I found that Uzbekistan, along with other Central Asian countries, are historically played a very important role in the ancient trading route called the Silk Road. The Silk Road is the bridge that connected the business between the Western countries and Asian countries. Before, I kind of think it's a Western Asian countries thingy, but then I found that Central Asian countries played a very important part as well. From the mid-19th century, Central Asia countries started to be colonized by Russia, and it wasn't until after the dissolve of Soviet Union they became individual countries again. So their culture was greatly influenced by the years of colonization and kind of also evolved with Russian culture altogether. So if we want to read more about Central Asian cultures, it's unavoidable for us to read books about the colonization of Russian and Russian cultures and the impact of Russian and also Soviet Union. So with that being said, let's dive into the books I'm gonna read for next month's event. I have 5 books on my TBR and another 5 books that I came across during my research, and they all sound very interesting. They didn't make to the list just because I think I don't really have time for them, but I hope they give you some inspiration if you want to participate in this event or just want to read more about Central Asia and Uzbekistan in general. So for category 1, read a book from Uzbek authors. I have to say it's kind of hard to find a lot of resources about Uzbek authors. However, I have settled down with a novel called The Railway by Hamid Ismailov, translated by Robert Chandler. This is a story set in this little town called Helios, which is on the Silk Road, and from the time of 1900 to the 1980s, and a lot of townspeople who have different backgrounds and different beliefs all come together to this town, which had this railway station. I'm dying to see some group portrait of the townspeople in Uzbekistan and read about their day-to-day life. As I said, it's very hard to find books by Uzbek authors, so for category 1, I'm just gonna read that book. But instead, I found myself getting a little bit too excited about reading about Central Asian cultures, so I actually got 4 books for category 2. The first book being Chasing the Sea by Tom Bissell. Tom Bissell went to Uzbekistan as a volunteer of the Peace Corps. In this book, he actually combined his travel story with the things that he learned and experienced and described how great and fascinating the land is. I again didn't really know a lot about the country, so I'm happy to follow a perspective who's also learning and experiencing from an outsider's point of view. Actually, I would love to read from an insider's point of view, but it's so hard to find, so I'm settled down with this book. The second book here is Making Uzbekistan, Nation, Empire, and the Revolution in the Early USSR by Adib Khaled. This is a historical nonfiction focused on the time during the Russian Revolution in Uzbekistan, talking about the war, the economic collapse, and the famine that happens, and all the tragic events, and also the power shifting in Central Asia. As much as I want to read more about the contemporary Uzbekistan and Central Asian cultures, I feel like it's also necessary for us to read about the history side, otherwise it will be like looking at a tree without its roots. And judging by the title of the book, I think it's gonna be very heavy on politics, which is a topic that I'm really interested in and love to read about. And hopefully it's not too dry. And also, I do want to say, if you are interested in this book and want to read it, do get the ebook version or check out your local library, because the physical copy of this book, for some reason, is very, very expensive. I don't know why, but just don't buy it. Next, I got a Chinese book called 失落的卫星 by Liu Zichao, translated into Among the Stands, A Journey Through Central Asia. This is actually one of the top 10 nonfiction of last year on a website called douban.com, which is a Chinese reading community that I use and loved. And it's kind of like Goodreads, but not really. I'll link a video down below where I talk about all the popular books of last year on that community. When I made that video, I was like, oh nice, an essay collection about the author's journey through Central Asia made it to the nonfiction list. And I didn't really think about it twice. But then when it comes to this month, I was like, oh, excellent, that's right on topic. So I'll be reading that, and hopefully it will be a quick read because I do read a lot faster in Chinese compared to English. Lastly, on my personal TBR, I have a book called Sovietistan by Erica Fetland. This is a book, judging by the name, talking about the impact of Soviet Union to all the Stan countries. The author takes us to see how the local governments are experimenting between the concept of democracy and the dictatorships. And the book also talks about how the traditions and the Soviet heritage merged into this modern world after they have been freed as individual countries. The book was first published in 2014, so I'm hoping it will give us more of a contemporary view of the Stan countries. Following, I want to introduce 5 other books that during my research I found equally fascinating, but I didn't put them on my TBR just simply because I don't have 100 days in June for me to read. But worry not, this is just the start of our reading adventure of Central Asian countries, and in the future, if we are coming back to read more countries in Central Asia, I believe I'll return to some of the books on this list. But I want to talk about them here to give you some inspiration and in case you want to prioritize them on your reading list. The first book here is The Great Game, The Struggle for Empire in Central Asia by Peter Hopkirk. This is a nonfiction talking about the power games that played between Victorian Britain and the Tsarist Russia, of course on the land of Central Asia, when they were the 2 most powerful nations on Earth. It covers the timeline from the Russia's eastward expansion all the way to the Russia and Japanese War, and it follows officers from both Britain and Russia who are involved in this power struggle of supremacy. I have no idea about the British involvement of Central Asian land before I came across this book, and it sounds so fascinating, a book about power games and politics, my cup of tea, but just simply don't have enough time. The next book is a novel, and it's another book that's written by the author of The Railroad, Handmaid is Love, and it's called The Dead Lake. This is actually a tragic tale talking about this boy who falls in love with this girl next door, and to impress her, he swam to this forbidden lake, which is radioactive. And that had a great impact on his growth, make him cannot grow into an adult man. And at the same time, the girl he liked grew into this beautiful young woman, and things kind of evolved from there, I guess. The description of this book actually gave me goosebumps. I don't know why. I think it's too cruel for me to handle, but it's actually very strange because I love reading about dark novels, but this book just I don't know if I can handle it. So that's why I picked the other one. Following, I have A Karpik Ride to Khiva, 7 Years on the Silk Road by Christopher Alexander. This is another book that written by an author who traveled and lived in Uzbekistan, and he actually was able to live with a local family for quite some time and get this immersed experience from that. And apparently this author loved Uzbek culture enough to even learn about the language, and not to mention the history and the culture. And he now was back in England and working as an expert tour guide on Central Asia. I think he went back to England kind of by force, not that he wanted to leave. And while he was in Uzbekistan, he actually witnessed a lot of tragic events, including a massacre that happened in 2005, where 500 to 700 people died. Second to the last, I have The New Woman in Uzbekistan by Marianne Kemp. This is more like an academic book about the women's history in Uzbekistan before and after the Russian Revolution of 1917. During the Russian Revolution, there's of course the power shifting, and following that is the shift of beliefs and religions. Before that, the women in Uzbekistan kind of followed Islamic rules, but after the revolution, a lot of women decided to unveil, and some are forcibly unveiled, and these changes actually triggered the violence against women. Recently, I read a book about women in wartime and how they're not only unprotected, but also women are facing way more violence and way more danger compared to men. So I'm glad there's a book talking about the women's history in Uzbekistan, especially during the revolutions. And to be honest, it's because I just read the Women in War book, so it's kind of heavy for me to read next month for this book, so I'm holding it for now. The last book on this list is Dictator Without Borders, Power and Money in Central Asia by Alexander Cooley and John Hadassah. For some reason, I have read a lot of books about dictators lately, and even the novels are set in the time where there's a dictator in power, and I just saw a YouTube video about dictators too. So this book grabbed my eyes just because of the title, but the content sounds amazing too. It talks about how business works in Central Asia, focusing more on the dark financial side, talking about topics like the elite bank accounts, the bribery, the money laundering, and the foreign lobbying, and all of that, which sounds fascinating. And again, I just wish I have 100 days in June. And that's all the books I have on this TBR and recommendation list. I hope I can read all the books on my TBR. Not even gonna think about the books that I listed after that, but they all sound so amazing. Just remember to check out the webpage and join the Discord if you're interested, and say hi in the comment section down below. Let me know if any of these books catch your eyes, or what you're gonna rate for this project, or even not for this project, but what's on your TBR for June. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up if you liked it. Stay healthy, happy reading. I'll see you in my next Bookish video. Bye!